is Rory O'Toole.
And my name is Matt Schultz.
And this is How to Be,
the podcast where we discuss ancient wisdom, modern hacks, paperback self-help books, and pithy platitudes
in the hopes of figuring out the best way to live this one precious and wild life.
Is it possible to become a more moral person? And if so, what does that look like? Join us as we explore living a virtuous life.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Roar.
Sorry for I'm feeling a little allergy stricken today, so I apologize for the nasal and my voice.
I've been there. I am getting over a cold. I'm pretty much over it.
Oh, good.
My sinuses are still a little inflamed, I would say. But actually, okay. Do you remember when I texted you hot topic sleep extension or something like that?
Sleep lengthening.
Sleep lengthening.
Yes.
Okay. My nighttime cold medicine has the effect of experientially lengthening how much it feels like you slept.
Okay.
Like the night feels, you know how
endless?
We've always talked about how like we wish sleep felt like what it is. It felt like 7 hours.
Yeah.
The sleep feels like 7 hours. And then sometimes I'll wake up and it's like, oh, I have 10 minutes till my alarm. I'll go back to sleep. Another
2 hours.
Long. It feels like, yeah, I'm just like fully in a zone of time.
Yeah, I feel like that happens to me when I'm sick, when I have a fever, when I'm febrile.
Okay. And I only have tonight's my last dose and then I'm out. And like I could really see getting addicted to sleep lengtheners.
Oh, you like how long it feels. It doesn't disorient you.
It is disorienting.
Uh-huh.
No, it's quite powerful. I feel groggy when I wake up, which normally I don't.
Yeah, that's tough.
But the joy of going to bed and knowing you're going to be there for an eternity. Wandering the earth for an eternity.
That does sound amazing.
A hellish dreamscape for an eternity.
Yeah, how's your dreamscape on these meds?
It's fine. They're vivid, I would say, but not disturbing.
Ugh. What's that like to have a vivid, non-disturbing dream? All my vivid dreams are the most disturbing.
But can I ask you something? What are you blowing your nose into?
Just toilet paper because I don't have any tissues in my house because usually I don't have to blow my nose.
Yeah, so this is a big how to be moment, okay?
Yeah.
Pens out, everyone. Pens and paper out. During this cold cycle, my little sniffer was so red and raw from toilet paper. And I realized, here I am, a grown man. I spend all this money on hand cream and face moisturizer.
Yeah.
And then I abuse my face with toilet paper.
I know, especially for someone like you who has bad allergies on all through allergy season, you're just using toilet paper.
Yeah, it's something about like the bounty of it. It's like I know I need like an amount of
that's
disposable
true.
paper.
Look at how
it's
like, thick this roll like, I'm holding up. Look how thin it is too. We buy the single ply because this is what I
hate that.
I know people hate it, but like I grew up with it, so like this is what I feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
My mom told
you're
me
allowed to move up in life more.
Listen, I've tried others, but I'm like, this is home to me, baby. This thick single ply toilet paper that my mom always said we used because it was more biodegradable.
Yeah. Is it?
I'm sure it's more biodegradable, but is that why we used it? I think we used it because our house was 150 years old. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And the plumbing wasn't good.
No, I like the kind that's like fabric. It's like a roll of velvet.
Yeah, mine is Mine is a roll of like itchy, see-through threadborne wool. Yeah, I'm gonna text Sam on his way out to pick me up some puffs with lotion in it.
With lotion,
Yeah.
baby. But the other thing that the toilet paper roll has an advantage over the tissue box is that you know how much is left.
Yeah, absolutely. You can feel
The
that tissue
tissue
box getting a
box
little
is a
lighter.
mystery.
Do you like how it fits on your fingers too? You just walk around with it on your fingers.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Your hand is a toilet paper, both holding up.
Should we jump into today's topic?
I would love to. That's why I'm here.
All right. The virtuous life.
Today we are talking about the virtues. And when we were looking into this, we came up with this topic, obviously just chatting with each other, talking about improving our character. And, there's lots of different virtues in the world. So there's the Jewish set of virtues, there's the Christian virtues, there's classically the Greek virtues. And so we're casting, I think, a wide net when we're talking about all these different virtues. We're being inclusive.
We're also just talking about the pursuit of virtue in general, in a society that I think degrades that pursuit.
Oh, and you do?
Oh, absolutely. I was reading a book called Everyday Holiness, the Jewish Spiritual Path of Musar, which is like the Jewish ethical virtue system, by Alan Marinis. Is that the name of that actor from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Rick Moranis?
Oh. I thought maybe we had overlooked his contribution to the good life. So he talks about this. He goes into it and he's like, it's all about self-growth. Your life is a curriculum and you'll be challenged, and the experiences you have dealing with the challenges, you will grow as a person. That's a quote right there.
Yeah.
And then he says, it seems a pity that entire lives are spent fumbling blindly in personal suffering and at the cost of an increase of evil. Yes, evil in the world, when each of us has another choice. So he does talk about the fact that like the pursuit of virtue and the pursuit of becoming a better person is ultimately about other people and about society. But also I think as a contemporary writer, he can't avoid also couching this in the self-help language of personal growth. So I think that like in today's world, we're big on teaching kids how to be successful and how to have like good boundaries. Success, boundaries, but virtues,
certainly
being a
not
good person.
Yeah, certainly not the language of today.
Morality,
because I think you're right. The emphasis on boundaries. It's so much more of an emphasis on individuality that erodes the emphasis on community.
Yes.
But I think that there always has been like a individual purpose to the virtues, because when I was looking into like what the Greek virtues were, most of them, especially Aristotle, had this idea of eudaimonia, which is that everything has a purpose, that it's the greatest thing the thing can do is fulfill its purpose. And so for the Greeks, the pinnacle of humanity was a life well lived in which you're striving for the virtues, and striving for the virtues and achieving the virtues means that you have fulfilled your function as a human.
Okay, so you're saying like they also sort of saw it in this way of personal growth?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or is that like is that also saying like that's like the ideal functioning society, the ideal functioning polity? What did Seneca say?
Well, Seneca actually did come up in this. Matt and I have noticed Seneca coming up a lot lately everywhere we see. Have you all noticed that, listeners?
Yeah, we think he was just invented. And now the aliens, like we're in the Matrix pod and he's been He's being retconned.
Exactly. Well, the Greeks also thought, and I'm using the Greeks very broadly, but the ones I'm really talking about is like Aristotle, the Stoics. They thought that human beings were inherently social creatures, and therefore they had a responsibility in social life to create sort of a common good. So the virtues are also there to create a common good, to make it more harmonious to live in society. So their virtues, the Greek virtues were practical wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And within those, you're not only fulfilling your purpose, but you're fulfilling social purpose.
So it was a balance.
It was absolutely balanced. I mean, that's temperance, right? Also, which I thought was really interesting when they were talking about the importance of temperance. It's like, okay, you're deciding what the courageous thing to do is, and you see someone being mugged on the street. Someone might say, well, no matter what, being courageous would be like running and, attacking the mugger and like wrestling the gun away from them. But actually, the Greeks say you need some temperance here. And you need to say, am I capable of attacking a mugger? If that's reckless, then I shouldn't be doing the reckless thing, which is on one side of the spectrum. But ignoring it would be the cowardice thing. So like I need to find the middle ground. And that's actually the best answer.
Temperance is there to keep the other ones from going into extremis.
Can be. Yeah.
Interesting.
And virtue in general is what they call the golden mean, which is that middle ground.
Okay, so sort of being balanced on all accounts.
Yeah. So like another example that they gave.
That.
What?
I bet you liked that a lot.
Obsessively love it. Love it. It's like the idea of like honesty, right? We all know that like you can't just go around telling people that you go to class with to stop picking their nose, because that would be a little too harsh. But we question, are you doing this person a disservice by not mentioning it to him?
My temperance runneth over in that particular case, because I have not yet said anything to him. That's interesting. I'm not so sure if the Jewish vision of the values, the virtues, not the values, the virtues is so focused on balance.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Well, sort of like, I don't know if this is just like the nature of like Talmudic sort of legends, but they deal in extremes. It's like, so like in the chapter about patience, it was like, if like this guy goes to a student and the student says, I need you to teach me this lesson 400 times before I'll understand it. So he does. He's very patient. He's the hero of the story. But then he's interrupted during the 400th time. And then like the interruption distracts the student and he needs him to start over. So then he teaches it 400 more times. And then like a voice issues from heaven being like, how great is this man? Which is like, a way that these stories end in to show us like, okay, that's the honorable thing. And also in that, this isn't the Jewish view, but this is just another view in that TED talk about patience that I watched with Oliver Burkeman, the guy who wrote 4,000 Weeks. He said that he like went to this museum to look at this Degas painting for like 4 hours to practice patience. Now that's pretty extreme. And he's like describing like what you really get out of it when you look at it for 4 hours. And I was like, it did not seem worth it to me.
What did he get out of it?
He's like, you can see the way the figures are almost translucent. It's like, I already see that.
So wait, so what he's saying is what you get out of it is you see the painting more. But what about anything broader that we learn about sitting and staring?
I mean, he has a whole thing about our experiences only really begin at the point when we stop trying to control how long they should take.
Oh, that's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's impossible for everything.
Yeah, there are so many expectations for duration. Our life is like Like, it's so frustrating to me when I'm trying to clean my whole apartment. It takes me way longer than I think it will.
Yeah. Well, why is that frustrating for you?
Well, because it's like I'm out of control of my day, and my day unfolds in a way that like I hadn't planned as a result. And I also have this idea that my apartment doesn't deserve that much time of my time. Like my time is this
Yeah.
finite sand in the hourglass, literally. And I only want to I assign value to every action I do, and that value is a amount of time that I want to spend on it.
Yeah. I have that with my morning Jewish prayer routine where I'm always trying to keep it within a certain time limit,
Hmm.
not because I'm bored with it or want it to be over, but because I'm alarmed.
Hmm.
Or I'm like, this is unsustainable if it takes too much time. It feels alarming.
Yeah.
Like there's some other, yeah, like it feels unwieldy. Its inability to stay within a 20-minute box,
Hmm.
where like a 20-minute box is a very nice kind of a box to put
Uh-huh.
things in. It doesn't stay there. Also, my morning pages, I want it to take 10 minutes. It usually takes like 13.
Yeah, it's really interesting the idea that I think that we've become accustomed since we're so busy, everyone's just so busy and has so much going on in their lives to the value of short, consistent habits, which I do think there is a value to. I'm not dismissing it, but duration scares us now, or it's frustrating to us. Like I have been able to meditate regularly, not for that long, 6, 9 months, whatever, just because I'm doing it for 10. I only need to do it for 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah, you only need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Other
That's
people, the
no,
Dalai Lama,
no,
he needs
no.
more.
What I mean to say is like that's the bar I set for myself, very
Yeah.
low. And I can tick it off if I do that.
Yeah. I'm back on meditation.
Good. Do you ever stool?
Back in. I have my meditation chair. Um, and I've got my healing vibrations, singing bowl YouTube video. And,
Oh, your
you
singing
know,
bowl YouTube video. You do too much in the spiritual space. I'm going to free you for meditation.
I
Prayer,
know.
morning pages, and meditation. Come on.
And studying
Yeah.
Torah
Not,
all day at school.
yeah, that's not.
But I'm like becoming a rabbi, so it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, I guess.
You're like, it's not the golden mean.
It's not the golden mean. Here I am, loving the
Temperance, my
golden mean.
dear. Temperance. Yeah. So te temperance in that sense, balance. I mean, balance is a challenge. I actually do think I lead a fairly well balanced life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely have too many little modules that I try to fit in.
Yeah.
Um, and they all feel indispensable to me, so it's challenging. It remains a challenge. I just think I need to accept it. It's like, oh, okay, this is what I've taken on, and it's stop stressing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I talk about the Catholic idea of virtue?
Oh yes, please.
So the Catholic ideas of virtue was very much influenced by the Greeks. Namely, Thomas Aquinas wrote a lot about virtue. Okay. And he sort of had
Wait, he
this.
wasn't a Greek.
No, he was influenced by the Greeks.
Okay.
So the Catholic idea of virtue is very similar to the Greek idea of virtue.
Okay.
So he also agreed that virtues were there to reach your full human potential, and your personhood unfolds as you're striving for these virtues. It's the path to happiness, path to freedom. And he also adopted, and the Catholics now adopt the virtues that came from the Greeks. They have like slightly different verbiage for it, but they're basically the same: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. But then there was the God element that now the Catholics integrate. So faith, hope, and love. the greatest of these is love. Okay. As we know.
Oh, is that what they say?
Yeah. That's what St. Paul says. The greatest of these is love. Without love, you can't have hope or faith or anything. Okay.
That's so sweet.
Isn't it so sweet?
The greatest of these is love. I love that.
And so you not only are trying to become your whole person, but you're using these virtues, those theological virtues, to be in communion with God. And I've quite enjoyed both the Greek and the Catholic thoughts on virtue. And I was noticing, virtue is very much so, it's Greek and then it's religious. There's not a lot of secular commentary on it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Our society is opposed to the virtues. The modern virtue, the secular virtues are about success and psychological well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like girl bossitude, boundaries.
Girl
What else?
bossitude. Yeah, girl bossitude, boundaries,
Wellness. Yeah, like digital minimalism.
Yeah, these are all like virtues. Like, I think you're right. We don't have a lot of emphasis on community, which even the Catholics say, like, so much of these virtues are important because you're bringing that to the common good. You're bringing a sense of justice to the common good, a sense of, you make the right decisions. And when you're making the right decisions, like prudence, for example, you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're considering how it impacts others.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've had our own little debates about this and conversations about this, like morality, like we don't live in a society that really prizes morality or teaches it or thinks about it. And perhaps that's because it's like hard to pin down an objective morality or to create like a shared foundation for morality that's not rooted in like one religion or philosophy over another. I don't know why. We just don't have like a common conversation about it. But I think it's actually fairly disturbing. And I've seen with people I know that it where this would normally it should be a factor in decision making. It's like, is this good for me? But also like, is it good? So we ask, is this good for me? And we give each other advice as friends. We're like, that's not good for you. That's good for you. Like, and we're so deeply rooted in a psychological perspective that usually what we mean is like, this will make you happy. This will make your anxiety abate. This will help you feel fulfilled. And we rarely ask each other or challenge each other seriously as friends and as family members, like, what is this, what is the action you're doing good? So like even yesterday, like, well, I don't know if this qualifies as a moral question or not, but a friend mentioned that a friend who has adopted sort of a stray cat sort of gradually, like the stray cat has been integrated into the home, it's a light ownership, was like, well, it's time to neuter him so that I was like, why? And he was like, so that he wanders off less. And I was like, you're allowed to wander off, like I didn't really want to get into it with him, but it struck me. I feel a little strange morally about the practice of castrating animals. I know I might be alone in that.
It's funny that you're saying like we don't have morality, because I agree with you, but there's constant debate about these decisions in the discourse, especially the online discourse, right? And people constantly going back and forth about things that I consider so trivial, like when people get up in arms about someone buying a dog from a breeder versus adopting from a shelter, and people will like go for the jugular to voice their opinion.
Yeah, what did that person say?
Well, I was reading about these two vegans who are like, basically think dogs shouldn't exist. And even though they own dogs, they consider them like palliative caretakers, essentially.
Yeah, riding out the dog apocalypse.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is a discourse that we do not need to get impassioned about and like malign each other over.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't think that's good for the common good.
no, and I think that the problem with like moral stridency in that way, which is like if you adopt a dog if you get a dog from a breeder, you're a bad person. It's like it ignores that like it's all about this one issue for you, okay? But like people have different moral calculus that they do on different issues,
Right.
and like they have all sorts of factors come into play. So like what we do is like we're like I've decided that X like thing X is bad, so if this person does X, then they're a bad person. But it's like, well, maybe thing Y is also bad, and that person is making a tough decision between X and Y, and they're also balancing in, a gluten allergy. Who knows everyone has these complex formulas that we do when we make
Well,
decisions in life.
so what I'm wondering is there such thing as a common good, or should we even be assessing it because it's too complex to understand?
I mean, I do think there's such a thing as a common good, and I think a lot of it has to do with creating a reasonable space. I mean, this is like I'm obviously deeply rooted in like American notions of liberalism and what like the public space should be and what the government's role should be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like a society that allows people to work out the finer points of the moral life on their own
Mm-hmm.
without imposing on one another.
And do you think that every decision, like the decision to adopt a dog or buy a dog, can be viewed from a moral lens? Or do you think
Yes.
that every decision, really?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. And do you think that you should always make the moral decision?
Um, I think it's impossible I think it's like absolutely
No, of
impossible.
course, but can like knowingly be like, no, I'm just gonna buy a dog from a dog breeder,
Yeah,
not
I
care
think
about it.
that
You personally, I mean.
I think it's okay to sometimes make the immoral choice.
Okay.
If there's if like the level of immorality is like at a certain level and the other value is at a certain level, it's like you have to do the calculus.
Like not all immoral decisions are created equal.
Yeah, like sometimes it's like, okay, the damage is relatively low,
Yeah,
and what like I'll get for it will be relatively high.
sure.
I'm trying to think of an example because I don't think adopting from a breeder is immoral.
Mm-hmm.
I like don't stand with that position. Um, so like what's like an immoral, but then like actually like when I think of what I actually do think is immoral, I'm like I am quite fixed on it. Like I really disapprove of people who like you and like everyone, honestly, like everyone I know are like it's okay to steal from like a big corporation.
Okay, I've never said that. You constantly misconstrue what I've said to fit into your point because you hate that idea that people think that it's less bad to steal from a corporation than from like a local business,
Mm-hmm.
which I do think it's not the same moral question at all. What I do think, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that we're talking about common good and like the world we want to live in. And I don't want to live in a world where everyone's stealing from Target. That's chaos to me. That's not common good. So that's why I don't steal from Targets. I
Mm-hmm.
know I told Matt one
Except
time
when you do.
there was Neosporin in my cart that I didn't pay for, and I was already at my car and I didn't go back in and pay for it.
Theft.
And he will not. It makes him irate to hear the idea that people think stealing is people to be stealing apologists. It does.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
really
I've met
strikes a
so
chord in
many
you.
people. Yeah, it really does. Because I think, yeah, I guess like, well, I'm not that much of a consequentialist when it comes to morality. Like a consequentialist is like someone who believes that like the basically like the badness of an act is based on its consequences. So
Mhm.
like if it, you know, like
Like if you drop
the
a bomb in Syria and it hits no one, who cares? It wasn't a bad thing to do, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, like you have to show the damages before you determine whether an act was moral or immoral. Um and yeah, I just like I don't quite believe that. That's not quite my moral universe that I exist in.
Yeah.
And I think that like obviously some actions because they cause more harm are more serious and like require a lot of thought and consideration behind them. But I think whether they are moral or immoral remains the same. So like my example that I use to like think about this is like, okay, if someone in my family, God forbid, were to pass away
Hmm.
and they left me instructions saying, um, I want to be cremated.
Hmm.
I said, oh no, just put them in the family plot. We don't have but like imagine that's the
Hmm.
situation.
Hmm.
So like there's literally this is like a victimless crime in every sense of the word. Like the only person whose wishes I'm dishonoring um no longer has consciousness.
So
But
yeah, okay.
it feels deeply wrong to me. It feel like it rubs my moral I don't know, system in completely the wrong way. It hits me very yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that way because it's like, well, one, for me, I do believe in the hauntings and the ghosts that will come back to haunt me in
Hmm.
that example. And two, you're like disappointing the individual of the past, which is still a very like powerful and real person to you.
Yeah, but you're not actually disappointing them. I guess like yeah, they're real for you. Listen, consequentialists love to spin a non-consequentialist argument in a way that makes it sound consequentialist. They'll be like, "Oh, you're trying to please like the memory of this person who you're acting as if it's a real like a living consciousness." Or they'll say like, "Yeah, you want to make sure that your wishes will be honored." But really, I just kind of feel like it's wrong. I feel like a lot of times, like the little things we do when we're that have no real impact still can have moral significance.
Absolutely. But I
Like,
think that there are different reasons why different things are wrong, even if it's the
mhm.
same issue like stealing. Like, in one sense, stealing from a small business to me is wrong because you're hurting an individual. Versus, like I said, stealing from corporations is wrong because you're creating a chaotic it's not good for the common good.
Mhm. Yeah. You don't think there's anything there about like taking something that's not yours?
I think taking some, yes, I guess, but it doesn't
Like, what
pull
gives you the
my,
right to take it?
what,
Like, you
what,
just own
what gives you
everything?
the right?
You just own, I'm just going to take this Neosporin because I want it.
Okay, that's not what happened. It was really about reflecting on the guilt that I didn't feel for it. I didn't feel guilty. I'm
Mhm.
like, no one owns this Neosporin. This Neosporin is an unneutered cat that should be able to go into anyone's shopping cart as it sees fit.
We had such a moral quandary, this like ongoing moral quandary here at my house with this stray cat that got
Yeah.
very attached to us.
Uh-huh.
And then, but it kind of seemed like maybe it had an owner, it had a collar,
Oh,
but it was literally always here, but
the
we were
cat was
feeding it.
choosing you.
The cat
The
was
cat
choosing us.
choose you.
And then my roommate was like, my friend wants to adopt it. I'm like, oh, we're moving its location now?
Yeah.
Like, what if it does have an owner
Oh,
who's like a little girl?
its friend outside of your apartment wants to just take this cat.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, like adoption in a city where there's adopting cats in a city like Jerusalem where there's a lot of stray cats. And it's so interesting to have some considered pets and some considered outside and or feral, I guess, and to like consciously make that transition for a
Well, you know
cat.
what it is? It's pretty privilege. This cat is gorgeous. She looks like a young Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers
She's
was never beautiful, and but as a
no,
cat,
not
she would
young.
be.
She's just not young,
Cold.
just like middle-aged Joan Rivers, like not geriatric Joan Rivers. She's pulled tight. She's got these gorgeous cat eyes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes she's fluffy, she's sweet. And the other day, she's always at the window meowing to come in, and we don't let her in anymore because she started pooping on the floor. But the other day, this other cat was at the window who was ugly. And I interpreted the cat's ugliness as meanness. I thought, ooh, that mean, nasty cat. Get away from me. And then later I was like, wow, pretty privilege with cats. Like this one cat is gorgeous, and we're just like, oh, just want to
Yeah.
concern. We feed her. We bought her hot water bottle so that she has something to cuddle on outside.
Okay.
All right, Roar.
So what kind of inspired us to do the virtues was we were talking about being more virtuous people in our lives. And so Matt and I decided to each take on a virtue and try and cultivate it within ourselves.
Yeah, how'd that go for you, Roar? Well, what do you pick?
Okay, well, I picked humility because Matt told me I needed to pick humility. I came to him very unhumbly and said, but what virtue could I possibly? That was the subtext of when I asked him what, I didn't say it like that, but the subtext was, what virtue could I possibly need to cultivate? And he just instantly said humility, which was really hard for me to wrap my brain around. Like for days and days after, maybe even weeks, I was asking Matt, what is humility? How am I not humble? Because I think that I don't think of myself as like someone who constantly is like, I'm so good at doing everything, because I'm really not. So that's easy for me to not be delusional like that. So I read a book by Okay, first of all, humility is only discussed through a religious lens. It was impossible for me to find anything secular on humility. It's really not. When we're talking about secular virtues, not being in justice is kind of a secular virtue.
Yeah.
Humility, no, not at all.
But justice is that a virtue? That's like a virtue of a society.
Well, it's a Catholic virtue. It's
you can
a
be
Grecian
just.
virtue. Yeah,
Okay.
especially as it relates to the common good.
Okay.
So I read this book by Andrew Murray. It was called Humility, The Path to Holiness. And he was a South African preacher in the 1800s. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. It seemed to be like the book on humility. Christians love it. Okay.
Did you tell me everything?
Well, he says, can I read you a quote? He says, he basically thinks humility is the foundation of everything you do. You can't do anything right unless you're being humble about it. And that you have to be so humble, you have to be an empty vessel for God to come and like fill you up. Okay. And that Christ was the most humble thing in the world. So this quote. Oh no, he quotes Philippians 2:5-8. In relationship with one another, have the mindset as Christ Jesus, who being the very nature of God, did not consider himself equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even on the cross. So what I really liked about that passage was being nothing, being an open vessel. And like how when I approach things in life, I come to that with such certainty of my knowledge and stance that it can really close me off to things because I'm not. That's the lack of humility I think I have. I
Mhm.
do think that I do think that I approach things with a degree of certainty that's prideful.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, I think something I really like about the Christian uh narrative is like the sort of beautifulness of the idea of God becoming a human who's born in a manger, like so humble.
Yes, exactly.
The-
Like, yes.
yeah, it's like undercover CEO, really
Undercover boss. Yeah, because
undercover
the
boss.
story didn't have to be that way. It's just the way that, like the story could have been that he was a Siddhartha
Yeah.
who was
Well,
rich and
the
gave up
story of
everything.
Siddhartha is kind of actually the same. It's about high becoming low for the purpose of enlightening the world.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess both have. I mean, yeah, humility is such a foundational virtue of all of the big religions.
Yeah, Moses is called the most humble of all my children.
Mm.
You have to be humble to be a prophet because like what you said, it's like you have to be open. You can't be imposing your own will on this message that you're getting from God or doing it for your own personal benefit or be too sure of yourself. So yeah, I think that that's very interesting. Humility, yeah, like yeah, we think of it as just like, oh, I'm not very good at that, but it's actually quite it's much deeper than that.
Yeah,
I also think of humility as smallness in like a cosmic sense. Like lately I've been enjoying doing some reflections on my smallness in history. I get so
absolutely.
anxious about history
Yeah.
and my place in it, just like in the way the world is going. And I just like try to remember like, okay, I'm just this little blip on this wave of history and like I don't even know if this is a wave or if it's a froth on a wave.
Yeah, that is
Yes.
humility, is really understanding how really not getting wrapped up in your own story,
Yes,
in
this
your
is the
own
most
daily.
important thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
We are the real people. And like, so I'm taking this class right now called Modern Jewish Thought.
Hmm.
And it's very like history of ideas. And it's like, well, in this period, they were emphasizing this because this was their situation. So they perceived God this way. And sometimes I find it a little overwhelming. I'm like, where's the truth?
Of course, yeah.
It's just like shifting ways of looking at things.
Well, yeah, like what we were talking about, like the way we raise children now. Obviously, like the Puritans were like, you better be humble. But now we're like, no, you
Yeah.
better have good boundaries. And it's just like perspective. And I mean, I think that our society as a whole could stand to have a lot more humility because sometimes I feel like we're the townspeople in the Bible stoning the prostitute. We're
Oh,
all so convinced of our superiority morally, and we just like find someone who has some sort of transgression and want to like pummel them.
which brings me to my virtue. Well, I mean, my virtue was patience, but also on my mind was wrath.
Hmm.
And I mean, wrath is not a virtue. It's a
Sin.
patience and yeah, it's like a deadly sin, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so.
but they're the same. They're flip sides. Patient, like in my book, he talked about the connection between patience and rage. The
Mm.
feeling of being impatient is a feeling of becoming enraged, kind
Hmm.
of. It's like, "Argh, why isn't this done? Why isn't this person getting out of my way? You know?
Yeah, and you know what? That kind of goes back to humility, like being like, I don't deserve to be treated like this. Who
Oh
are
yeah,
you,
my way.
lady? Yeah, my
Get
way.
out of my way. It's actually a sidewalk. city property. And lots of people are using it. Yeah, and sometimes I'm like, these people are in my way, and I feel like they have conspired to block me. They've made it their life goal to block me. That's how it feels. Um, so I tried doing this thing. This was not advice from the book, but I just tried it. Well, I tried a few different things. So with human frustrations, people blocking me on the street or paying in pennies at the register, um, I would just I'd be like, "Oh my God." And then I would just smile to myself like a lunatic. Mm. And it kind of worked. It would calm me down.
Well, you're
I'm
doing
okay.
you're doing what the Greeks and thereby the Catholics also think, which is important to practice these habits, and one day they will become easier. Then
Yeah.
they will start to be really internalized in you.
And the other thing I did was like what I'll call the "this is what the living do"
Mm.
method,
Can you
where
explain that reference? I think
yeah,
it's a
so
nice one.
this is what the living do, or what the living do
Something along those
is
lines.
a poem by who's it by? Howe
Marie
something
Howe.
Howe.
Marie Howe.
Marie Howe. It's a beautiful poem. She wrote it for her brother who died of HIV AIDS, and it's about the little things we do for the day through the day, searching for a crumpled receipt in your purse, picking up something at the store, and how those actions feel in the shadow of the loss of someone who no longer gets to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I'll find myself waiting for a light to change, and I'm like, this is what the living do. Like, I'm here. So
Mm-hmm.
many people would love to be here. Yeah, so many people would love to just be walking to the store one
Mm-hmm.
more time. Um,
Now, how does
and
that
it,
relate? Sorry, go ahead. You finish your thought.
I don't know, it really softens the impatience of waiting at a light. It really softens it, and it brings in your smallness
It
also.
does. It's
They all
very
sort of
humbling.
interconnect
They
in those
do.
ways.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, how does this relate to your feelings on gratitude? Because I know you're skeptical of gratitude as a means of approaching life.
Yeah, well, my issue with gratitude is so the Jewish version, like in this book of Jewish virtues, this Musar book, the word they use for gratitude means like recognition of the good, acknowledgement of the good, which I appreciate more than gratitude. The idea of gratitude, the idea of saying thank you for our blessings, sort of implies that we deserve them and that the people who don't have them don't deserve them. It's
Mm.
like, like, thank you, mommy, God, for giving me this nice warm bed. And it's like, yeah, well, lots of people don't have nice warm beds, and it's not because they weren't given it, you know? So I
Yeah.
feel like acknowledgement of the good in your life, and maybe I'm quibbling over word choice.
Acknowledging that you're grateful that you have a bed versus acknowledging the randomness of the world is a nice thought
Yeah.
to me. I do
Yeah, that
not like
also
it
makes us
when people go up in award shows and say that they're like so grateful to God for like giving them millions of dollars and this award and yada yada, because it does imply that like you're chosen,
yes.
not humble.
Also, the other thing about gratitude is the way it relies upon the image of the impoverished.
Yeah. But I mean, you were saying like you were feeling good thinking about the people who don't get to make cross the crosswalk.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But I wouldn't call that my gratitude. That was a patience practice.
Oh, okay.
And I also thought about, yeah, it's just like such a, the other little mantra I would say is like, It's a joy to it's a joy to wait at a light
It's a joy to
in
wait.
Jerusalem. That's what I
Mm.
would say. For a little Jew boy like me, it's a joy to wait at a light in Jerusalem. Because it's like, okay, so the Jewish people have longed for Jerusalem for 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that none of that time was spent picturing waiting at a traffic light, but that's what it actually means to be here,
Right.
you know? So you better enjoy that. You better you better clock those moments and be present with them and be patient with them because that's what you were praying for, baby, all those
Yeah,
2,000 years.
exactly.
This is it. What do you think it
Mhm.
was going to be?
Yeah, so I'm like feeling renewed in my humility, but I'm kind of I don't know. I don't know how long it'll last. I think that definitely I've been thinking a lot lately about stubbornness and defensiveness and how I think I've talked to you about this. What a disservice it is to your life to like be a stubborn and defensive person. Like if someone comes to you with a reproach, you should be humble enough, even if you think that you're beyond this reproach, to reflect.
Yeah, it can't hurt.
Right?
Yeah,
Because
defensiveness.
everyone thinks that they're always right. Like you think Harvey Weinstein was like, let me reflect on this. Don't be like Harvey Weinstein. Even if you
I
think there's
know.
no chance that there's any truth to what someone's saying to you, we all are incumbent for the common good to reflect in good faith on our actions and our words.
Well, did I mention this in our last podcast that so the poet Yehuda Amichai talks about how when he was young, they thought they had to drain the hula
Oh,
swamp.
yes, you did. You did.
Okay. I'm saying it again to make it less malarial.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realized now that he's older that that was a mistake ecologically and they filled it back up. And he was like, I lived my whole life in the span of that mistake. Like it would have been possible to live your whole life in a mistake. And it's like we need to be, and that's also harkens back to that history of ideas thing I'm talking about. Like the things that seem so reasonable to people will not seem reasonable in the future
So,
because our opinions will change. People are gonna look back at how we made fun of Rachel Dolezal and be like, that didn't age well.
what an example. What an of the time example. Okay, but how does this sort of meld with striving for these virtues? If it's all if there's no objectivity to our time.
Because the
The
virtues
idea
are
of
eternal.
idea of what justice means now is something so different than what justice would mean 100 years from now or 100 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think that yes, there's a chance we can err, and we have to accept that. I
Mhm.
do think the virtues are fairly timeless. I don't think
I think
being
the
patient.
virtues are timeless, but I don't know if the expression of them is.
No, the expression of them is not, but we need not be for the ages.
Okay. But at the same time, we don't want to be so strident in our strife in pursuing justice that we get wrapped up in the times, I guess. This is where temperance comes in.
This is where temperance comes in. And your justice is a very particular one you're choosing because I think you're like invoking the legal system too and sort of the
I'm actually,
trends.
yeah, I'm talking about the court of public opinion, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I think that it would be good in any time on Earth, in any time period, to not participate in public shamings in the way people do. I think that justice is also timeless.
Okay. Okay. I'm thinking about that. Yeah. It's hard to say because we're so in our times.
We're so on our times. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that would have been a good advice during the witch trials. I think it would have been
I
good
don't think,
advice.
yeah, I don't think they were acting with practical wisdom during the witch trials
No,
or
they were not.
courage, and certainly not temperance.
Yeah, I don't think it's very just to pass judgment on people you don't know.
Um, that's a good point. I think you're right. But some people like it's hard not to, like a Harvey Weinstein or a Chris Brown or a Roman Polanski. I feel like it's so clear to me that giving a 13-year-old Quaaludes and then having sex with her is a bad thing to do.
Of course, that's a bad thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That you can say that that's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
But I don't know where the line I'm drawing is, but I'm having trouble finding it. I'm not going to be able to sketch it out here. Like,
Yes.
obviously, you can say that, like, yeah, you shouldn't like murder people. Like, it's okay to have opinions and convictions, not just opinions, convictions about what is right and wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
like who should be protected by our legal system and who should be brought to justice by it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is different than internet pylons for like wrong think, someone saying the wrong thing, tweeting the wrong thing, even if you think it's a terrible thing that they tweeted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think there's like a difference between like making a faux pas or having like a bad opinion that was expressed,
Mm-hmm.
or like being like a bad ex of someone.
Bad feminist. Bad
Yeah, like a
ally.
toxic. He was toxic, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I think there you can have a little bit of forbearance
Yeah, I think that this
and
is
say, oh, that sounds awful. You know, today someone came up to me who I didn't know, who was telling me about this situation at a school he goes to with this person who's like toxic. And then this other girl in the conversation was like, "Oh my God, can you believe that this guy did all of those things?"
mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh no, I said some sort of appropriate response." I was like, "Oh, that sounds really challenging."
Mm-hmm.
But also like the other type of response you could make would be to say, "What an asshole." And then when you hear that guy's name again in another situation, be like, he's toxic. He does, you know, like I don't actually know the situation. So I responded empathically to the narrative that this person was telling me. At the end of the day, I don't know this person. I don't know the details of the
Yeah.
story. And I'm not going to pass any judgment on it or carry it with me.
Yeah, I think that's really wise advice. I think I need to think, I think it's something I do think about and will think about more and humble myself before the question because there's so much wrong immorality in the world, things that I think are immoral. But then at the same time, the way that we address those immoralities, moral indiscretions can also be what I would deem as immoral or unjust.
I was on the bus the other day and this no good kid had his dirty sneakers on the seat in front of him. And I was like, patience, patience. I didn't say anything. And it killed me.
Mm.
It hurt. It every second his feet were on there. The disrespect to other people who will have to sit on that seat. And it just so that, you know, there you go. Me judging. Judgy
Mm.
Wudgy was a bear.
Mm. Sure. You need to be an open, empty vessel.
Yeah. And then when me and Yoav went to see Knock at the Cabin,
Mm-hmm.
there were a couple of loudmouths in that theater,
Ugh.
and I was not patient. I
What'd
went
you
and got
say?
the usher.
Oh, you got the usher. Well, now that's interesting. Why didn't you say something yourself?
Well, first I did.
Were
It was
you
so
okay?
Israeli theaters are insane. So normally I'll give up at a certain point because it's like there's too many sources of noise.
Mm.
But in this case, I had an ally. There was another couple talking to them, and it was one source of noise. The conditions were ripe to say something, and I was like, first I gave like just a shh, and then I did like another head turn, and then
Mm-hmm.
finally I was like, what's with you? If you want to talk, go home. You got Netflix, you
No,
got
you're
Hulu.
saying all this?
Yes, I said you got Netflix, you got in Hebrew, you got Netflix, you got Hulu, you got Disney Plus. Why did you come to a theater to talk through it? We paid money to see this.
Oh my God.
You want to waste my money?
Oh, wow.
And then he
Wrath.
kept talking.
Oh, wow. Ante up. And then what
And then
happened?
the ally took the next turn. Good ally. That's called good allyship. And then the third time they started making noise, I went and got the usher to enforce virtue.
It's so interesting to me because like I would never do something like that, obviously. But I kind of love that you do because I also am like for social order and like social rules. So I don't know, am I leading you astray by encouraging you?
Yeah, by
Or are
laughing
you
at the
doing
story.
us no, are you doing us all a favor? Like a part of me really feels like you're doing society a favor.
I think I need to find a balance. Like
I hate these
I don't
hoodlums
need to be
too.
telling a kid to take his shoes off the seat.
Ugh. Okay, yeah.
It's a little too curmudgeon-y.
Yeah, it's very old man. Telling someone to take their baseball hat off inside a restaurant.
Yeah. I don't need to be doing that. But the movie theater thing, it's like you're gonna ruin the movie. And there are people who want someone to say something, and I can be that person. But I should go in humble, an empty vessel, so that I know it's the Lord working through me and not me just working out my wrath on someone.
I do not. Why would how could someone be so inconsiderate, Matt? You know,
I don't
but
know. It's
what would
insane.
you do if that was your friend?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, have you ever shushed a friend before?
Yeah, I have.
Sometimes a friend needs a little shush.
I mean, has a friend ever come to you though with like a really bad thing that they've done morally? I know they have. And it's
Yes, and I've said I think that's immoral.
yeah, but it's interesting. It's like you have more judgment for them. I mean, one, not just you. You have more judgment for them because they're your friend, but you also have more understanding for them because they're your friend almost too. So maybe we should start thinking about
Yeah.
everyone as our friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Mhm.
Remember that everyone has a mother who loves them
Somehow.
somehow. That nose picker does. She
Yeah,
thinks that he's her special boy.
a nose ripe for the picking. Alrighty. Anything else to say on the virtues?
No, we look forward to hearing all of your opinions about whether it's okay to steal from a big corporation. I suspect that most of
or
you will say yes.
or why it's not good for you to steal from a big corporation. There could be different answers to that. The whys.
We'll ask both questions.
Or if you do it, but you think it's a little wrong, but not that wrong, maybe as wrong as, neutering a cat. I loved the virtue episode or the episode. I love the virtue research. I'm going to be really looking at virtue lens for a while now, I think.
Good for you. Good for you. I expect to see the fruits of that
Yeah.
unfold in our relationship.
Well, so we'll see. We'll see. I hope that you're an open vessel and not too
But I'll be
judgmental.
patient with you. No one's
Thank-
perfect, but God.
Bye, Matt.
Bye.